Hi, this is Luke from the podcastthat.com family of podcasts. Special thank you to our Imaginary Legion patrons for all of their support, especially
Stephanie,
Jason,
Armando,
Jen, and Jennifer,
and our Praetorian Guard,
Bailey,
and Sydney.
Find out how you can join the Legion at patreon.com/stayimaginary. Now on with the show.
The podcast that floats down here.
Hi, I'm Melissa, your Stephen King veteran.
Hi, I'm Ben, the Stephen King and horror film fanboy.
And hello, I'm Luke, your first-time Stephen King reader.
All right, and welcome back to the podcast that floats down here. Tonight, we are discussing It Chapter 1, The Losers Club. It was released in 2017 on September 8th. It was directed by Andy Muschietti, written by Chase Palmer, Cary Joji Fukunaga, and Gary Daubman. On its total run, it had over $700 million in the box office, which made it the fifth highest grossing box office for an R-rated film of all time. It holds the record for the largest September film debuted, and it beat that number by over 75 million just for their opening weekend. Runtime was 2 hours and 15 minutes. And one interesting thing about the release date of this movie and the next one, all numbers together equal 27. It was done purposely. Yep. Yeah, if you look at it, all numbers together equal that. So it was a good little factoid. So, starting us off...
Quick question on your stats there.
What's that?
Quick question. Did you look up what the 4 higher box office rated R films were?
I know Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. And then just now, Joker, the new Joker that's just been released, has beaten them all out.
Hold on. Deadpool is a horror movie?
No.
Rated R.
Rated R.
Thank you.
Five highest.
I feel better.
Box office
this
for
is the
rated
highest horror movie of all time. This is the highest grossing horror film of all time. It does hold that distinction as well.
I was really thinking, like, for that. That's one of the Saw movies in its heyday.
Matrix Reloaded, it was number 4. Sorry.
What, Matrix Reloaded?
Was number 4, yeah. Joker, Deadpool 2, Deadpool 1, Matrix Reloaded, and then It, Chapter 1.
I would have thought Saw, one of the Saw movies, not the first one, but maybe like the second or third, where it was huge, would have done pretty well. But
yeah, not really, like, because that's just a classic art, like, horror film. And yeah, I'm looking at the list of the top 50, and of horror films, there's nothing. Exorcist. 1973 is number 29. It Chapter 2 is number 23. Terminator, that's not a horror. I mean, yeah, there's really not horror films that do super, super huge. Right. Because usually horror films get released in September, October, and they don't, they're expecting to make a solid, 100 million or so, but never, a huge amount. But yeah, so that's why this one really stood out.
Cool. Very cool.
So yeah. So with that, I wanted to get you guys' first initial, just kind of 20 seconds each. What, like, off the cuff, what's your thoughts? I'll start with you, Luke. What was your first?
With me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping Melissa would go first. It was fine. There were parts that were good. There were story things. What you know about me is if it's in a movie and it's coming from a book or a story that's really well known, why are you making some of the changes that you're doing when you're literally spending money that is maybe more or just indifferent on the change? Like, that always bothers me. It's like, if there's a thematic reason why you're doing it, if you're intentional about it, I can get behind it. If there's a limitation that you're working around, fine. But if it's just like, well, we just wanted it to be different, that's not good enough for me. And that bothers me when I can see that. And overall, not a bad movie. Standalone, not knowing the book, I think it's enjoyable. It's a solid movie. it's one of those, you know too much, and maybe that's detrimental.
Yeah, fair. Melissa, what's your initial thoughts?
Okay, so I, like Luke, hate all movie adaptations, like, collectively ahead of time until they prove me wrong. Thank you, Lord of the Rings. That's, like I go into this knowing I'm going to hate it as an adaptation. So I tried really hard to not compare to the book. What I did is I compared it to the miniseries, which we just watched.
Mm-hmm.
And I was helped in that because my husband watched it with me. And Bob watched the miniseries with me, and he watched this movie with me. And by far, we enjoyed this movie much, much more than we enjoyed the miniseries.
I would completely agree with that statement.
I do agree with that.
With one small exception, I feel like the children were cast brilliantly. There were things, again, not book related. I'm not going into that. But there were things about the kids that I loved. I loved Pennywise, this version of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was excellently creepy and kind, and you could see how he could suck somebody in. And I loved the teeth. I had a good feeling with the teeth.
Sorry, I'm very sorry.
That's okay. It's still my turn.
He said 20 seconds.
He did.
We'll get into minutes, so hush. I'm just saying. And there was just some funny moments to the point where, like, if Bob laughs out loud at something, I know it's working because he's almost a bigger critic than I am in a lot of ways. And he was genuinely laughing at certain parts, and not like we were laughing at the miniseries. We laughed.
It's a different kind of laugh.
Yeah.
We laughed at it, not with it. And this movie, we laughed with it. And so, to me, I enjoyed it way, way more because the miniseries was fresh in my mind.
Fair. Completely fair. And kind of my feeling on it, because I'm the only one that saw this live in the theater. Like, I saw it opening night back in 2017. I loved it back then when I saw it because it was, I absolutely loved it. I was in awe. I was like, oh, this is so good. I mean, Bill Skarsgård, yeah, he kills it as Pennywise. I still like Tim Curry better, but Skarsgård holds a true, like, he does a very good job of it. Very creepy, hits the right notes and everything. This time through, though, because I watched it a couple times, but this is the first time I've watched it after I was finishing the book and, like, going deep dive. And there was just some stuff in there that I just was not a fan of this time through because I was being more critical of it, I suppose, since I've seen it before and I can. And realizing there's some stuff that I just did not like, did not enjoy as much. Still funny as hell. I loved the acting was done well, apart from a couple roles, couple spots that I'll get into a little bit. But it's not on the actors, it's on their direction, I think, and it's on the writing. But overall, enjoyable film. I still liked it. I still laughed several times. And there is one scene in there that still, even though I knew it was coming, still kind of creepy to have pop out at you. One of the jump scares got me in the theaters. And we'll kind of get into that. So
I will say there were, just as another general thought, there are a couple things I noticed in this movie that, harkening back on discussions that we've had throughout the book, I can see some conversations, I guess, basically from you, Ben, because you're the only one that had seen this, that I can see where maybe some of this imagery in this movie colored certain conversations that we had in your perspective. That for as a book only or book only plus miniseries, we're not there. I mean, not the same level that it's deliberately done here, which we can get into later. But I just wanted to, like, there were certain things I was watching. I was like, oh, if I had just seen this and then read the book, I can see things being interpreted slightly differently. Yeah,
and there definitely is, and like I said, kind of a few points I'll touch on in a bit here for it. But yeah, so let's go ahead and start talking about the changes from the book. I'll start with my first one. It's, set in the 80s compared to the 50s, which is a nice jump up. It's literally the same year or 1 year earlier than the 1990 miniseries, kind of thing, set 89. So it's a nice touch. They incorporated the 80s stuff very well. I think it made you feel like it was from the 80s, even including, and I have this note later, but even including an 80s style montage music, scene that it was like, really? Because I forgot about that when I've seen it originally and watched it this time. I'm like, really? You have to have the montage.
Why do you think they put it in the 80s? I have my thoughts.
Well, to make it updated to today, I mean, just in general, it was so they could, 27 years later, so that now
contemporary with us currently.
Contemporary, yeah, but it also keeps with the timeline of when the book was written, when the style is, because there is that nostalgia, because remember back in the 80s, everybody was writing in the 50s, the nostalgia of growing up in the 50s. So now this movie was made for people who grew up in the 80s, and so it was that nostalgia.
Made for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was going to say, I agree with that completely. Like, the reason it went back to the 50s is because the people who were in their 30s and 40s during the 80s were young in the 50s. That's their childhood. For us, those of us going to the movie theater, our childhood is either the 80s or right after the 80s. So it's just enough nostalgia. I also think this jumped right on the end of the introduction to Stranger Things, which
that's exactly
a giant like 80s resurgence, plus with Finn Wolfhard in both things, in very different roles, might I add. There's just this big push for the 80s.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the angle I was going for, but Benji's answer covers that. And you guys both hit on it because those writers fit into that same thing. So it definitely, I think, aided in the success of this movie, going on the coattails of one of the highest grossing Netflix shows of all times that was set in a similar period with the same types of nostalgia.
Yeah,
but
and funny note to that, Luke.
Right along with that, like you said, the writers, it just fits. Like it's two things happening concurrently for the same reasons, but it's just also really convenient for this to become one of the 5 highest R-rated movies of all time because it's right after that. Because Stranger Things 1 was that 2017?
I think it was 2016.
2016. So either way, like still another year because then it just makes sense.
Yep. And
Stranger Things was first because everybody knew Finn from Stranger Things, and they were like, "Oh, and he's going to be in this movie." It was like a thing.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the guys who wrote and created Stranger Things originally had pitched to redo this movie. They were going to be they had originally signed on to do it, and then it just didn't work out, and they weren't chosen to continue on, and they went to the Machetes. But then they went and wrote Stranger Things.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, because and you could see the Stephen King influenced and all that. So yeah, it definitely made sense to me. So Melissa, your note kind of has the same thing as mine from the next part. So go ahead.
And this is both beginning of the movie and the theme throughout the movie. And as the movie went on, I liked it less and less. Okay, let's just start off by saying the Georgie scene at the beginning was wonderful.
Yes.
Loved it. Loved the arm, loved the kid crying, loved the lady on the porch who saw him like down in the sewer and didn't do anything and then came back later. The part that was the biggest change was that nobody found dead Georgie's body. Georgie went missing. And it upset me at first. And I was like, this is so different. But okay. And then as the movie went on and that became more of the motivation for Bill instead of like the parent thing, that really didn't sit well with me. That was sort of my biggest change. That was too noticeable, other than some of the loser stuff that you guys have commented on later. But that's the big plot change that bothered me.
The fact that the body wasn't there, and so Bill was searching to find him, as opposed to having that and then just doing this as a retribution.
Yeah, and like the idea that if I do this, maybe like my parents will talk to me again. No, like I really want to find my brother. No, like I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of that particular change.
I absolutely agree with you on that. It kind of why I had that same note there, because it adjusted the purpose of Bill. Bill, originally, it was a revenge. It was I have to make this revenge and also bring my parents back and, kind of they'll love me again, instead of I have to bring my brother back who might still be alive. And yeah, it did. The way they played it later on with, what happens down in the sewers and everything, does make it a bit more impactful because that's not actually Georgie, down there. But it still kind of hits that note of, and fine, I will give it a call back to Jonathan Brandis in the miniseries. You killed my brother, you bastard. That's a powerful line. Instead of you took my brother, or I want my brother back, is you killed him and I'm going to kill you, kind of thing. And it's from the books too. And yeah, it just kind of
prepare to die.
Exactly. So
I am
go ahead. I haven't been to.
Have you seen that movie yet, Luke?
Of course, I've seen it, and it's fine.
Yeah, I haven't been. Sorry, I had to make a stuttering joke. All right, Luke, go ahead with your first note.
Well, I actually have an overall thought that kind of fits what you guys were getting at of just thematic changes in the movie, and it kind of stems as to maybe why George is missing. It's less on the parents. This movie, very much like the miniseries, doesn't have the time to develop all of the nitty dirty grittier parts of the story. They can allude to it, but they don't spend the time to develop that, because that would be it's how many pages, a 1,200 page book to really get into why Derry is so messed up, where this doesn't really look at Derry being messed up. It doesn't have as much racism. It doesn't have as much bigotry and, all of these other child abuse things all over the place like the book does. Like every single person has something, right? This skips that a bit. And so opening the door to do it the right way and having Bill's parents neglecting him, I think they just didn't want to spend the time to develop that and show, as opposed to just the one time where Bill's dad was just mad at him for borrowing his map or whatever.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that were
in the sewer system to try and prove where Georgie's body went.
Right. There were just a lot of things that were simplified, right? And the searching for your brother as opposed to trying to get revenge it's just quicker, I think, in this case. But either way, as the movie starts up, we have the really cute Billy and Georgie scene. That whole scene was awesome, right? I think that's really well done. The song playing on the piano is not for Eliza, I'll tell you that much. So another, why would you change it? It's not like it was more contemporary back in the 50s.
I have one like that too. He got golf wax and not turtle wax.
Yeah. Right. It's why change it? I just don't get it.
Now, I did like the incorporation of the turtles throughout. There
were some things here and there. Yeah.
Three separate.
Why not include the turtle wax?
It's not like turtle wax is not a brand anymore. We digress, but not really, because that's the point of this section. But I don't know. Just why don't you just play the right song that's specifically? I don't know why.
Yeah, no, and it's not like it's not in popular domain or general domain. It's
right.
You can use it.
Yeah, no, it's available.
So, all right. So, Luke, go ahead with your next thought there.
Another one is just changes in characters a little bit, right? Like Henry Bauer's dad is the policeman. It's a bit of a consolidation, I guess. It simplifies things because you have to have the policeman involved, but you also need his dad involved. So, that doesn't bother me, but it's just kind of oh, that was a little odd. It just changes Henry Bauer's character a little bit for me.
Because, you lose a little bit of his motivation, because before his dad's a racist asshole that just instilled into his son that he's a racist asshole. The only time we saw Henry Bauer's dad be a quote-unquote asshole was when his son had taken his gun and was shooting it, and he comes up and scares the shit out of him. That's the only time.
Shooting at his son. Okay, that's a big one.
But he's trained, so he knows what he's doing. But but still, it's not. It doesn't show that how Henry had this hatred instilled into him and everything. Because it shows Henry, Butch Bauer's being actually kind of a decent cop and decent person, for lack of a better term, because we don't see him being an asshole. Really. So, you lose a lot of Henry's motivation and that kind of stuff with it. My kind of thought process, like I said, Luke, the character changes and stuff. My biggest one, they gutted Mike's character.
Right.
They totally gutted Mike's character, gave all of his interesting stuff to Ben, and even then kind of downplayed a lot of Ben's stuff. And it's just, it really felt like they gave the main focus to Bill, Bev, and Richie. Those three got the main focus. Eddie got a little bit. But
Stan had a lot more.
But it wasn't even
useful.
But I don't think it was any different than Stan in the book. Stan felt equivalent.
Yes, I would say he was properly Stan.
Yeah, but Mike, Ben, and even a bit of Eddie were kind of just pushed to the side a bit Eddie got a little bit with the mother.
Eddie was pretty good. Like
Eddie,
I enjoyed Eddie. I agree with you. I think overall though, Mike's character was demolished.
Yeah, Mike's definitely was, and
it was a bit almost like caricature-ish, right? It just boiled down to, oh, you're the token black kid. That's how it felt to me. Like, oh, we have to have the black kid.
Yeah,
and like, you take away all the value that he really brought, as opposed to just being, oh, you're also the seventh part of the team. Like it just
and like the historian and the one who's dad, which by the way they knocked off Mike's parents.
Yeah,
like the one whose parents are the most involved and the most like all the good things that made Mike weren't there, and that was really upsetting.
And I mean, nothing against the actor at all. I think the actor did wonderful. It's just a lack of use.
He was given nothing to do.
Right.
Exactly. And it kind of goes into like, and they cut the whole architecture thing, engineer thing out of Ben. It was, he's literally a historian, not an engineer. Why not give Mike the engineer stuff? If you want to, give him, something where he can
swap things around. Fine. Yeah.
If you're going to swap it. But I'll go into my last kind of thought on the changes. And my biggest change is Eddie. I'm not a fan of his personality. I'm not a fan of little man syndrome, of being angry all the time. Eddie was the quiet one. Eddie was the one who was always in awe. He was smart, he was good, but he wasn't a dick. This Eddie's a dick. And I didn't like it. I'm not, was not a fan of the direction style. Now the actor did great. Don't get me wrong. He was told to act that way, and it was done well. But
the jokes were funny. It's just
true. Yeah, just as
jokes were funny.
What's that?
Do you know why the jokes were funny?
Please enlighten us.
Richie and Eddie ad-libbed most of their dialogue together.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes. That's just the two of them. They were brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
In what they did together.
Yeah, and I'll get into some of the stuff with especially Eddie and like the little behind the scenes stuff that I found out a little bit later on. But yeah, and so like I said, he was funny. He was a good actor. It's just I just didn't like the direction style, because Eddie is the one you're supposed to feel sorry for, and here I just didn't feel sorry for him.
I did. I wrote a note similar to your note here, Benj. I just said Eddie is much more antagonistic with Richie, and I think it follows into suit with. And I don't know if I dislike it. It is characteristically different than the Eddie that we got, and it was funny. It was cheap thrills, right? Which is fine.
I didn't mind Eddie and Richie. I actually enjoyed them on screen together more than almost anything else in the whole movie. I really enjoyed the two of them. What was different, though, was that both of them are supposed to be Bill's best friends. And instead, they became each other's best friends, which cut Bill out of that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the piece that I feel like maybe that's what you guys are responding to, the fact that they weren't Bill's people, they were each other's person.
That might play into something I have to say later, actually.
What?
That could play into a thought that I have much later that we'll get into. But
okay, I thoroughly enjoyed their relationship. I just thought, and I didn't mind most of their back and forth, except for what it does to Richie's character as he becomes the biggest naysayer against everything, which is not from the book. That was my biggest takeaway from their dynamic. But except for that, I could have watched the two of them talk for an hour and been perfectly happy doing that.
Yeah. No, I can completely agree with you. So go ahead, Melissa, I'll let you go ahead with your last note on the changes.
I'd rather have Luke go through his list of all the changes from our characters, if that's okay.
No. Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just most of the kids' first interactions with Pennywise, the dancing clown, are quite different. Some find consolidation, some, like I said earlier, just why? You're already doing some of the stuff, but whatever. So for Mike, there's no Rodan, but there's this kind of butcher shop / black spot called the Harris House scene, which we find out later that Mike's parents were killed in the burning house and he couldn't help them, so that's why he fears that. But it just, again, somewhat of a consolidation, including elements of the black spot.
Which they talk about later. It's not like they don't get that in.
Right, which is why it, on my rewatch, taking notes, I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess his parents were involved. It just, fine, whatever. So that one's different. Stan, there's no bird book or drowned boys. There's this creepy painting thing, and he's working through getting ready for his bar mitzvah, right? But that's kind of the whole scene where the painting falls on the floor and the the woman is hiding in the closet then or whatever. Ben, there's no mummy. He kind of takes over a bit of Mike's at some point with the library and a headless burning body. Patrick, in general, Patrick Hochstetter is quite a bit different. He just wanders into the sewer and gets taken there, which we'll talk more about Patrick later, I think. Eddie's is basically the same. He goes to the house on Nebel Street, and there's a creepy bum with syphilis that tries to kill him. So, nailed it. Bev's is close enough, It's still a bathroom scene. There's some other more maybe visually interesting things like hair coming out, like
as she had just chopped off her hair,
right? And the whole hair cutting thing, like it was a consolidation of her relationship with her dad and being bullied at school. Like I got it. I understood why they made the changes.
I didn't hate the changes to Beverly's story in the first 3/4 of the movie.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, her first interaction with Pennywise though was close enough. Voices from the drain, blood all over the bathroom. Fine. Yep. Father can't see the blood. Then they all come and help clean up. Bill, no photographs. It's actually just Georgie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
fine,
which I'm okay with that change. Yeah. You know, I did like that scene because the puppet master style thing of Pennywise behind him, kind of using. I thought that was cool.
I can be okay with that one, especially since the photograph scene that we had later on was different than, like, we never had the Richie and Bill photograph scene where their hands go into the, which if you're going to cut that part, I'm okay with Richie or with Georgie not being in a photograph, because that was one of the first times reading the book that I was like, holy shit, like what is going on with this photograph? Like he's sticking his fingers in and it's cutting. Like that was one of the first levels of, okay, yeah, this is actual magic of some sort. Like I can't justify what's going on here anymore. Richie, there's no lumberjack, just a bunch of clowns and the bottom part of the cafeteria at lunch, right? It's kind of about it. Another major change. Well, those are, I guess, the more
bottom part of the cafeteria.
Well, they were like at lunch, and then he like went downstairs
into like the boiler room area or something. Yeah.
Oh, I'm blanking on that.
And there was just a bunch of clowns down there.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, not quite, because also this also goes into later on when they're in Nebel Street, and he goes into that final room, and there's a bunch of clowns in there. Yeah, but I think he had something in the basement earlier.
Well, that was the miniseries. You're thinking of the miniseries.
It happened in this movie.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm completely blanking on it, so sorry.
No, it's okay. So that's it for like the more direct interactions. I've got a couple other big things that if you want to wrap this up here. Bev gets taken by Pennywise.
Ugh.
I mean, fine. Okay.
No.
It very much fits in the why, like, but
it was completely unnecessary and ruins this really strong. She was, to me, the strongest character up until that point.
She was great. Yeah.
Like, not just actress, but character-wise, her story was the most compelling. I cared more about her than any of the rest of them. But all of a sudden, the girl has to be taken. Damsel in distress. We got to go save the girl. It's a bunch of crap.
Yeah. The only positive to it was Ben got that, moment in the sewers with her and everything, and it kind of added a little bit for Ben. But beyond that, and even then, that's not good enough. Like, I'm not a fan of it, but at least it did lead to that point. So no, I definitely agree. I'm not a fan of that one, but it did lead to a great Pennywise dancing scene. Come on, I loved it in the musical box. The up and down,
and anytime Pennywise was on screen, I was happy.
Yeah,
I didn't like how he got there.
Yeah,
I am blanking on where she was when she actually got taken.
In the bathroom. It was after her father, started to attack her, and
that's right.
He came in and she whacked him with the top of the toilet seat, knocked him out.
And then he's just right there and grabs like from the side of the screen. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So another one, Bill's idea to do the blood pact at the end.
Yeah.
Take that from Stan. I mean, Bill's the one that did it, right? But it was Stan's idea. Again, like, just why? I get it, because I have a couple other big notes that we're going to get to that fit that. And the last thing on the marquee outside the movie theater, this isn't really a change. It was just something I noted here for some reason, but it says Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Yes.
And when was this movie set in?
1989.
Which
which would be about correct.
I thought I'd looked it up because I thought it was off. Like that movie came out the next year, but I could have done it backwards while watching the movie.
1989. And this one it's Nightmare on Elm Street 5: The Dream Child. So it is very Pennywise-ish, where that one does use a lot of like self-fear kind of stuff.
I was thinking this was set in 88 for some reason because I looked that up and I was like, man, they were off by a year. I thought there was a date somewhere in there that said it in 88, but I could be better on that.
Yeah, because IMDb. Yep, it's in the summer of 1989. A group of bullied kids. Yep,
then we're good. Never mind.
Yep, it's right on because trying to see what release day was.
And that was one of those like, how could you miss that?
So yeah, August of '89, which is technically when this. Yeah.
All right. Good.
So yep, that's all good. But all right, awesome. So Melissa, go ahead with your last change.
It's more of a casting issue. I felt like Ben was cast too young in comparison to the other people. Like in general, we were really confused. Bob and I were watching, and we were and Butch and them jump in a car, and he's like, they can drive. So that was a little weird to us because like Butch and them are supposed to be 13. Well, then they are 12 or 13, and then they bumped up our kids to 13. So that meant Butch and them jumped up to 15 or 16, I guess. But yeah, that's where they were driving. But Ben still looks 11.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie is a small kid, but he looks like a small 13-year-old as opposed to Ben, who looks like an 11-year-old.
I noticed that very, very much.
Bothered me. Yeah. That's all. It just bothered me.
I'm completely with you. Like when Bev first walks up to Ben and he's listening to his headphones and she was like, "Can I get around?" I was like, that's not Ben. Like, no, like that is not Haystack Calhoun.
Because he looks 8 compared to her, because she looks 14, 15. Like,
right, yeah, and she looks on the older edge of the spectrum, which is fine for her character. Like, I can be okay with that, but he is nowhere near aged up as everyone else is.
I will say I do really appreciate their hidden New Kids on the Block dialogue.
I thought you would.
I thought that was brilliant. I was really, when she was like, "Okay, hang tough, Ben," and he just like,
"Please don't go."
Please don't go, girl. That's another New Kids on the Block.
Yep.
So
yeah, you say that like I don't know.
She finds the poster on the back of his door, and he's like, "Please no, please don't show them."
And she closes the door.
Yeah. So all right, so we're going to kind of jump into our big thoughts overall and kind of main points here. I'll kind of start with mine, keeping on the Ben track. I have a few more than the 3 we were allowed, but they'll be quicker ones. Did anybody else catch the creepy old lady behind Ben in the library after he sees the book? He's flipping through and he sees the pictures, and it kind of shows his face. And there's a the woman who gave him the book is standing in the background, like looking very menacing and like everything. And then it's never touched on again. I don't know if it was just acting style. I don't know if it was just like a red herring kind of thing,
or it could be like a Pennywise is watching him thing.
Yeah,
it's never resolved, at least.
Yeah, because the right next scene is when he goes into the basement and finds the headless corpse chasing after him and all that. And so it was just kind of one of those, like, I remember reading online about that. Everyone's like, what the hell? You can't pay that off, with the old woman. But it was just one that kind of always stuck out to me. So Luke, go ahead with your kind of first thought there.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I was getting at with Melissa's thought earlier about how Richie and Eddie were friends kind of without Bill, right? Like they're friends outside of Bill, which didn't really happen in the books much. It was always Eddie and Bill, Stan, and Richie. Like those were the 2 groups. At least that's how we met them. And which still kind of happens here, but there is basically no buy-in from any of the other kids except for Bev to help Bill. And like throughout, when Bill, which maybe he rushes into it, like we have a lot more build-up in the book to get behind Bill, his mission, right? And they're along with that, and they live that together, where here it's rushed a bit. And so that's maybe why there's no incentive to help him. But there's just, I think you lose the strength in the Losers Club when 90% of the people there, and that is not a good percentage because there's 6 people, and 90% doesn't make sense, but they don't want to help him. Like they fundamentally don't want to go into the house. They fundamentally don't want to go into the sewer.
71%.
71% are reluctant. And I just think you lose any benefit that the Losers Club magic would have when they don't want to be there. They're dragging their feet the whole time.
Yeah. And it's basically to create, not controversy,
Conflict.
Thank you. They're trying to create conflict in the group when it doesn't need it, because the conflict was never about the losers. The losers were always a unit, except for Stan. Like, Stan was always the reluctant one, and even then, Stan was less reluctant than normally would be.
Stan was quite Stan. He was the perfect level of reluctant. Like, I was fine with Stan.
Yeah, but
it was the right level of Stan for the standing that we needed Stan to do.
Yes,
exactly.
He stand well. Here we stand.
All right, Jorah.
Yeah.
But all right, Melissa, go ahead with your first thought there.
I super loved Patrick Hockstetter.
Yeah, I like that we got him.
Well, it's not even that we got him. I didn't even know which guy he was at the very beginning when they're walking out of school and there's all the bullies, and I'm like, oh, that guy's kind of a douche, and that guy's kind of a wank, and that guy's kind of an ass, and that guy's fun. That guy's actually a bully. That, like, the way he carries himself, I thought, obviously it is not the same type of Patrick Hockstetter as we get in the book, but yeah, just that level of crazy. I love the idea of the hairspray and the lighter to, like, it's just enough of a callback to lighting the farts.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that, totally level of Easter egg to it. And he was a bully. Everyone else was like, really? You're supposed to be scary acting like that with that mullet?
I was like the kids from the bullies from A Christmas Story. Like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you say that like I watched that movie. I don't.
Yeah.
But
no, you're dead on with that, Luke.
Patrick Hockstetter was awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I liked his incorporation. One thing it kind of leads into when he goes missing. They did this over and over and over again. The jump scare fake out. The music builds, and it stops, and here comes the jump. Nope. And then there's the jump scare every single time.
The hesitation jump scare.
Yeah, the hesitation. And it's like, it works once or twice, but the over and over and over again, and like one of the first times we really get it is with Patrick Hockstetter in the sewers kind of thing. And I did love the I Heart Dairy balloon.
Right, worked that
nice.
in.
They worked that in. There was some really cool scenes with that, and again, Henry Bowers. Or actually, Luke's got a note here, so I'll kind of go with you can go with yours on that one.
Okay. I quite liked the scene where Harry Potter, when Henry kills his father. And we'll just start with that. But I thought it was solid enough. Like, it shows Henry getting his knife back in the mailbox. Good job. I think he's the right level of hypnotized to make that happen. That I thought it was with very little build up by the movie, because we don't have time to do it. I thought it got the right feel for me, at least.
Yeah, although I agree with you with the build up at the movie, I didn't care.
Oh yeah, I wasn't invested in the father at all, but
or in Henry.
And Henry, they didn't make him that much of a threat. Apart from the Ben with the knife, that was really the only.
And they did well with that. I was really glad they got that part right.
Yeah, they got that part right. And I liked the Mike introduction, the rock fight. I love Beverly being the first one there. Kind of the throwback to Beverly doesn't miss kind of thing. She's the first one, nails him right with the rock. But right before the losers show up, love the Pennywise. Love
the Pennywise. That was the best. Pennywise is waving
the hand.
Someone else's arm.
And I don't know if you remember this, but about 2 years ago or so, when we first started the podcast, or after I'd seen this movie, I put up a "Hi friends" wave. It's Pennywise waving, and then Forrest Gump waving off the ship.
Oh yeah.
I put that out on Twitter a while back, and yeah, that's one of my favorite GIFs from or GIFs, however you want to say it, from this
G-GIF.
movie. Yeah, GIF.
GIF.
So in the house in Neibolt Street, did anybody catch the Pennywise Tim Curry doll? That was a little Easter egg. There's an Easter egg of a Tim Curry style Pennywise doll right by the casket, kind of thing.
Along with like the other clowns that were in there.
Yes, yeah,
Nice.
and I think, and actually somebody did list up. I think there's a Bozo mock-up. There's a couple of other famous clowns. I think there's Ronald McDonald in there as well. But yeah, Pennywise was sitting right next to the casket, like the
Nice.
Tim Curry one. I liked that. One thing that I found interesting that I found out looking through some behind the scenes, Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård, only had 4 minutes of dialogue the entire movie. Very limited dialogue, very limited screen time. Like there's only it's only like 8 minutes of the whole movie is Skarsgård, is Pennywise, which
It felt like a lot more than that, if I'm being... I thought there was a lot of scenes, but a lot of them were quick scenes. Like he would pop in for 2 seconds at the end of a scene. Right?
Exactly.
And I think it's 4 minutes of dialogue. I don't think it's necessarily 4 minutes of screen time. Because, and I read that too, and it was kind of like, I don't know, we're big Jason Bourne fans in my house, and the last Bourne movie, he literally had, I think I counted, 15 lines in the movie with his name as the title. So like that doesn't make it ineffective by not saying a lot. I actually think Pennywise was incredibly effective in this movie with the limited dialogue that he had.
I think we almost saw him too often. Like I think he did wonderful. I loved this Pennywise, and I think he does a great job of making his own Pennywise. He's not doing Tim Curry as Pennywise. He's making his own, and it's very, very relevant and very, very believable, right? Like I think it's even scarier. It's a better scary, funny version, where there were times where Tim Curry was just funny, like, which is fine.
Like the graveyard, like when he's in the graves. Like
right. But I mean, my point being, like, I feel like we shouldn't have directly seen the clown every single interaction with Pennywise. Like, I think leaving some of it open to interpretation would have been fine. And then have that quick scene where, he was probably involved in my interaction that I had. We didn't need to see the clown every single time for them to make those connections. But like for me, a really, really effective villain is one you hardly ever see, right? That's the unknowing, like knowing that they're there, but when are they going to come? Like, and did they do that? Is that just happenstance? Like the uncertainty of it, I think, can sell quite a bit too. This was very on the nose of, yep, and here's my calling card every time.
See, like they could have cut him out from the Patrick Cockster one, just let the balloon pop and then Patrick's gone or something like that. Leave it open ended.
You could even replace clown with balloon more often. Like just have those be the two things. Only those two.
Now I'm okay with him with all the interaction with losers themselves because you want that tying factor in. But like with the outer people, like Georgie, you have to have it, but the losers need it. But like anytime else, like I said, the pet trucks there, and I can't think of any other times that we see them outside of that. But like the limited, I don't disagree with that. One thing I did like on the directing style, at least, Andy, the director, basically kept Bill away from the kids. Like they had very little interaction while filming, except and the very first time he had any interaction with the kids was the refrigerator scene where he came out with Eddie. And like the kids had never seen him in makeup, nothing. And so he pops out of the refrigerator and he's attacking Eddie. And Eddie's reaction is what you think is almost natural. It's so, real. And then as soon as the scene's done, Bill's like, okay, kid, are you okay? Are you okay? And he goes, dude, I fucking love that. Keep doing what you're doing. It does great. And Bill's like, what the shit? Like he's like, okay, this kid's going some places because, it was just the way he acted. And so I like that direction style because you got more of a real sense of fear from the kids because they didn't know, exactly what to expect.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, Melissa, go ahead with your next thought there.
I thought Derry was perfect. Like the town of Derry. You know me, I really hate wide sweeping shots at the time. I felt like they were used sparingly and appropriately. I loved seeing I'm going to say it wrong. The Kundaseg. What's the name of the river? There you go. Kundaseg. See, you could see it running through the middle of town. I loved, like, it felt very New Englandy in how it was set up. There was a Paul Bunyan statue that was quite obviously made from plastic, things that I absolutely adored. So I appreciated the attention to detail of the town.
Yes. Now, you could tell that the creators of this movie took pains to make sure they got certain things in, which I definitely appreciate. And yeah, some stuff, again, as we talked about, changed, but the overall arcing, it was very much a fan service movie, which is not a bad thing. They, did their job. They wanted to make money. They made money. Luke, did you have any other thought that you wanted to kind of cover?
Yeah, so when they actually go down in the well inside of Neibold Street, which I thought was a solid consolidation. I was okay with, let's bring these two things together and make it all one place, right? The well house is what they call it. And like that I was good with. We don't need to go down to the Barrens to access the lair. Like, I'm okay with doing that from the Neibold Street house. I really liked the imagery of the kids floating around up that kind of tall tower of bodies. Like, it actually gave us a reason why they say float down here. Like, I liked that visual. It very much felt like, here we go, Melissa, you buckle up for this one, a Hercules Disney movie.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Disney Hercules movie, when Hercules at the end is playing basically Perseus and goes into the underworld and has to dive in after Megara. And it has like this, I forget what they actually call it, but the tornado of souls kind of thing. Yes. And it had a feeling like that, which I loved the fact that they did that. It gave it a reason for why we say they float down here. Because to us, even after reading the book, like, you don't really know. That's why, to me, like, that was part of my disappointment with the way the book climaxes, is there's still like, okay, well, there was so much potential and it just kind of fizzles out a bit for me. But this, at least there's a cool visual of what's going on down there.
Yeah. No, I can definitely understand that. And kind of same thing going along with that scene of, even though it was, and my note here says Beverly Wilkin with True Love's kiss, and I have blah, thinking back on it, it still works. It gives Ben that little bit of a moment to be the hero, to be the one, and they call back to that.
13.
Exactly. But my last note on this section is, the one scene that I was talking about that got me in the theaters, that actually didn't get me to jump, was the projector screen scene.
Oh, yeah.
When they're going through, because in the previews and the trailers, they show you the clip of Pennywise's hair flowing, and it's like the mother's turning into Pennywise and they're all freaking out. So I knew that was coming. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I'm kind of wondering how they're going to go. And then I kind of looked away for half a second, turned back, and a massive fucking Pennywise is coming out the screen. It made me kind of jar back. I was like, okay, you got me with that one. Usually most horror shtick doesn't get me. That one got me. And I appreciate that. If you can get a guy who's seen everything, because I didn't expect it, it's like, okay, I liked it. And just the acting, the kids being terrified and everything, it was well done. I really enjoyed that scene.
Melissa, was there anything horror film wise or anything like that really unsettled you, or did you get the jump scares? Anything stand out?
I hate horror films, so I don't watch them. So I didn't even identify them as jump scares. I didn't even know that term. That's how much I refuse to watch horror films. So watching this really is a big sacrifice on my part for all of you. But I was prepared with my pillows and blankets and my husband to hide up behind and under. So I was okay. Also, I know the story. So that
helps.
That helps. I do better when I know what's coming. I didn't know what was coming with Projector Scene, and I loved it. I thought that was brilliant, because I also know that wasn't going to be where he got them at. So I was okay. But I don't think I was terrified at any moment in that, that I usually get in horror films. Mostly because I know how it ended.
Sure.
My children refused to watch it with me, and I tried to get, not the little one, but I tried to get my older girls to watch it, and they wanted absolutely no part of it at all. Okay, I tried.
Yeah, the one.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say the one horror aspect, the change that I didn't see coming either. It didn't jump scare, but I liked the change, was the long arm. Melissa touched on this during the Georgie scene. He starts crawling away, and that arm just extends out.
I wish they had shown more of that, though. I wish they would have shown it go all the way out, as opposed to just you see it starting and then you see the pull away shot.
Same. I felt like in the theater they had, but then watching it back, it's not as quick as it's not as long as I thought it was.
Yeah, it's
in the theater,
quick.
It felt like a.
You get the idea, and then you have to fill the arm length gap, if you will,
exactly,
to justify what happened.
I will say, I don't think it was nearly as scary as I expected it to be. And again, I know the ending and I know the story pretty well at this point, but I was really ready to be scared. And there were definitely things that were very different that were scary, like them being separated in Neibold Street was very different. And that was kind of scary, but it wasn't oh my God, they're going to die. I never had that moment of oh my God, the idiot girl is running up the stairs. Don't run up the stairs when the bad guy's coming after you. I never had that kind of.
You didn't?
Yeah, and well,
I did.
A friend of mine put it very well. This movie is very much more of a thriller movie than a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a big difference. It's not, you
sure.
do have some of the jump scares, but it's more of a thriller style, which, you know, is fitting because that's what it is. It is not quite a horror book. It's more of a thriller, you know, style story. So it felt very fitting.
With horror elements, right?
With horror, exactly.
That's the thing that they're fine distinctions, but if you're not aware of both of them, I can see people just saying, "Oh, that's a horror book," like Stan's wife would say.
Exactly.
But the one thing that definitely the jump scares didn't get me. I did get a little bit of the we're watching Scream, right, and we're delineating how you don't survive a movie, and when they're going through the house on Neibolt, I'm like, oh, okay, here's the part where all the kids get separated to do their individual battle of some sort, which happened. You go through the door, these two go through the door. Guess what? Third one's not making it. He falls through the floor. Guess what? Yeah. Someone's going to see something and not bring it
they cut it down to the I do like that they cut it down to the 3 instead of having to have all 7 of them have their own interaction.
I'm glad it was only 3 because that was just like, here it is. Okay, I get it, which is fine. But the one element in the movie that the first time watching, I'll just say unsettled me, and it's because it's an uncanny valley trick, right? Is the woman in the painting, right? Mm-hmm. That Stan sees. And when she comes out, I was like, I know she's coming out of the painting. I knew that was happening. That's a given. But I don't know, there was just something just off. Like it was just the right level to hit that uncanny valley of making it just creepy. And like I was like, my body doesn't like that. I don't like the way that looks.
Here's the thing. There actually was an actress that played that role originally and had like a full mask, makeup, and everything to do. And so I don't know if she's still credited, but she did the whole role. And then at the very end, they decided to CGI it, digital, to make it all digital, which I think added a lot, like you said, to the uncanniness. Had they left it with somebody in makeup or, that it might not have hit that note because it just didn't feel unreal enough.
Yeah, and it was just on that cusp of it's sort of real, but it's definitely not. Like it just that mental uneasiness, which that was the one that I was like, if I had to pick like a scary moment, which fine, whatever, that would be the one that hit me the most.
Yeah. Now I want to give one quick shout out to my favorite line in the whole damn movie. They're gazebos.
Yeah.
To his mom. I'll give Eddie. Yeah, I'll give him credit for that. That one got me laughing.
I did really like Eddie with his mom. I like that he did a good job of not taking her shit anymore. I was convinced in his character at that point.
Okay, I'd like to point out a Richie line though in relation to that is when Eddie has to go give his mom a kiss, and Richie's like, "Do you need one from me? Okay, like, do you need me to come over?" And they're all like, "Get the hell out of the house."
He's like, "Sorry," when he closes the door. "Sorry, Mom."
Right. So, all right, Melissa, go with your last thought there.
So this is my last little thought, and once again, it proves that the best character in the whole movie in relation to how they are in the book is Stan. It's Stan being Stan, doing Stan things.
Stanning.
Bros being bros. Stan being Stan, doing Stan. So when they go to rescue Beverly, and I'm trying really hard to not focus on the damsel in distress thing because that's just that's just terrible. They all are like, "We gotta go! Drop bike, drop bike, drop bike." Stan takes the
kickstand. Yeah,
the
I love that.
Yeah.
Then walks away. Like, I understand that this is a problem, but I'm gonna set my bike up now. Can I just be annoyed that they all just drop their bikes in the middle of a street?
Yeah.
In the movie, and I was like, "Oh my God, you guys! Your parents bought you those bikes. They don't want them laying in the middle of a street. A car's that's when I realized I was old. But
I had the same thought too.
It was that point that I laughed out loud when he stands there and puts the kickstand out. I was like, "Yep, that's perfect. That's great." The only thing that would have been better is if he walked to the side of the road and then put the kickstand up.
Yes. So Bob and I laughed out loud at that part. We laughed out loud at Pennywise waving another person's arm.
Yes.
And there was like one other moment that was it was mostly Richie's lines to Eddie and the dialogue between. They were
kiss your mouth with that. You kiss your mom with that mouth. You probably got crabs.
Yeah. What? Is everybody seeing this just because you're virgins?
Oh yeah. Is that why I'm not seeing it?
Yeah. Finn really killed it, and the hype behind him coming from Stranger Things was well deserved, because here's the thing, when I first heard Finn was going to be in this, I'm thinking, okay, he's Bill because of his character. Yeah, because of his character in Stranger Things. He's the Bill character. It made sense. And I liked, the Bill. I liked all the kid actors. I think they all fit very well. Ben was a little young, but he still acted. He did a good job.
Completely agree with that.
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to kind of get into our favorite things now. And Melissa, I'll let you start with your favorite thing.
Okay, I don't know if you guys caught this, but we caught this. This is one of our big laugh out loud moments. Yeah. The lady on the children's variety show.
Yeah.
She was brilliant. But my favorite line that she said, she's singing in the background and she's singing, "The sewer is a fun place to play with all your friends."
Mm-hmm.
There are so very few elements of showing just how much control Pennywise has over Derry, and using the television like that was just outstanding. And she comes back multiple times. But that was the first time I really noticed it, and we just lost it. We were like, oh, that's so funny.
Was that during the Henry scene?
She is also there during the Henry scene.
She is also there during the Henry scene.
No, what?
Way early on.
Okay, I missed it. I missed it.
It's just in passing.
When Eddie was leaving his mom's house,
it may have been.
That might have been.
It could have been when Bill saw Georgie too. It was like, because it was like in the other room almost. It's almost just in passing. But if you have subtitles on, it's easier to catch because no one's talking and you see these words on the bottom and you're like, who is saying? Oh, it's the TV, and it's just the most ridiculous, dry, but wet in a creepy way type humor, if that makes sense. Like, it's not intended to be funny, but it is.
Here we go. This is going to be quite the connection. It reminds me of on Full House when Joey had the Ranger Joe show, where the character that had all the little kids sitting around, and that was like Ranger Joe.
Ranger Joe.
That one. But that was the show, only the lady just kept talking about, like, you'll all float too, and the sewer is a fun place to play with all of your friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Very lamb chop-ish.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go with your favorite thing.
My favorite thing, I kind of already talked about it earlier, but there's another level to it, is when they finally get down into Pennywise's den or whatever this thing is, and you see all the kids floating around the big circle thing, like we already talked about, the tornado of souls, which was awesome. And that whole scene in general I thought was strong, taking out the Beverly damsel portion of it, but even like his interaction with Beverly down there was funny. Pennywise, funny guy. But when we start seeing into, I guess he's doing this to Bev, I believe, and he's about to eat her head, right? And his mouth starts opening up, and you see the multiple rows of teeth, and we kind of get a visual down his throat, right? And we see the deadlights, right? Right? And because we didn't get too much description like we did in the book of like, oh, this is what do they call it? A skin changer, or what do they call it in the book? Where we just said it's a boggart. I forget what they called it, but
pay attention to the book.
Yeah, but like we didn't get the you have the bite the tongue and do this don't laugh thing. But I thought this was a good enough visual to show that down his throat is the deadlights. Just the connection of like his mouth, and like almost you have to commit yourself to seeing that to be able to kill him. So I really loved seeing the deadlights in his throat there. That was awesome.
Yeah, big fan.
No, it's the same. So I have for mine. I originally had the projector screen as my favorite scene because it was just a great moment that all brought them all together. But then I thought about it, and no, this quote here is probably one of the best ones in the whole movie. You punched me, you made me walk through shitty water, dragged me through a crack house, and now I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. It just, pretty good. Yes, it was because the whole time, of Richie being the asshole. It was that moment where, now they're all together, and each one of them got their shot in. Richie hits him with the bat, then Mike hits him with the nail, or, hits him with the gun or something, and they all take their shots and work as a group, and it was just a good scene. It was a good closing scene that I'm okay with the consolidation, cutting out a lot of stuff. It felt right, for what this movie was from beginning to end. It was the right ending for this movie.
Yeah, and it hit on the same belief in damaging him thing, right? Like, even though it was empty, Bill believed it wasn't the little shooter gun thing.
Exactly. I like that they had Mike being the one. There's nothing in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the same way in the book, or in on Evolve Street. Mike's like, she's out of bullets, or was that Ben's thought process?
That was Ben, because Mike was the first one to jump on as soon as he saw her. Mike was the first one to jump on, like the story of, oh yeah, she's gonna get you, like get him, get him.
So a switch between those two characters, which I'm okay with.
Surprise.
So, all right. We're going to go into now our least favorite things, and I'll start with mine. We kind of touched on it several times, but the gutting of characters, especially Mike, very limited kind of interaction with him, and just he's just there kind of thing. And yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Not, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it just didn't feel right. So, Luke, how about you?
Melissa should give hers first because mine wraps both of those ideas up too. Sorry.
I severely disliked how they did Richie's character. I agree with you, Benj. Mike was decimated, and that was terrible, and that's the worst thing. I agree with you. The second worst thing is what they did to Richie by taking him out of that second in command role and creating him as the, you guys are crazy and this isn't really happening and I don't want to have to do this. It made his redemption at the end more powerful in your favorite line, which I thought was a great line. But in general, it just kind of, it changed the character of Richie in a way that I felt it also changed in the miniseries.
That's the point I was going to make. Yeah.
Is a problem for the book Richie. Book Richie has yet to have a accurate representation on screen that does him justice, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And I think that can definitely color people's opinions on reading Richie. When if you see the movie first or the miniseries first and then go to the book, I can see people disliking Richie from the start. Where, I mean, Melissa, you were very surprised at how much you enjoyed Richie this time through.
Yeah, and I've read it multiple times, but it wasn't until I got rid of all of that and really focused on who Richie is as a person and where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. He's brilliant and kind and like such a good number two that it's sad to me that we don't see that.
Yeah, it seemed like the movie took a lot of notes from the miniseries Richie.
Right. That one character in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, fair. All right. And Luke, how about your least favorite thing?
Oh, my least favorite thing is kind of goes along with both of those. The characters just being different, right? And seemingly none of the losers backing Bill. Like, you just lose the sense of unity, the sense of group, which is the true strength of why they're effective, right? Is because they stand as one. Here we stand. And that just, I feel like Bill's just going and they're just feeling like reluctantly going after him because they have to, like it almost to save him as opposed to helping him and believing in the cause. And it's just a big thematic color that's way different, I think. And some of it comes down to, Richie not being the second in command and he's the one that's holding out where, I mean, I don't know, only Bev seems to give a shit, and that's because she's got a crush on Bill. Like, that's the only reason. It's not because she believes in him. It's not because he's a great leader. She just fancies him. And I think that's not a strong enough reason for the connections that we had in the book compared to what we got in the movie.
Yeah, fair. Now, one note I did want to kind of call out to that we didn't touch on. I wanted to give credit to Bev's father in the portrayal. Way creepier than the miniseries portrayed it, and actually way creepier than what even was in the book, I'd say, because this was very more on the nose of child molestation and, makes you...
It was direct.
Yeah, it's very direct, but it was very well done. It's creepy and as negative as that is. It was well done and made you hate the guy even more. So just wanted to call that out too.
I think that's fair.
So, all right. New section I didn't see until I scrolled down here. Question for Luke and Melissa. Since I've already seen the next movie, and we'll get into thoughts on next time, what are you most looking forward to or worried about with it, Chapter 2? Melissa, go ahead with your thought first.
I'm worried about Mike because I love grown-up Mike. I love him. And I'm really nervous that because kid Mike was kind of a big nothing, that they're going to do the same thing with grown-up Mike. So that is one of my big concerns. That's my biggest, probably big concern. I can probably come up with a couple others if you let me think about it for a second. So we'll jump to Luke.
All right, Luke.
Biggest What am I worried about? Yeah, just some of the big changes. I'm just assuming they're gonna follow through and be the same big changes, and they're not gonna do it right, which is fine because they've already set this wheel in motion, right? So you can't change it now. But for where they're at, I'm worried a little bit about how tight Bill and Bev got. I don't know. Like they got very on the nose with they like each other. They want to be together, but she has to go off to Seattle, to get away from her dad.
Portland. And I took it as Portland, Maine.
Oh, and that
Portland, Maine
colors it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is very late in the movie, right? At this point, I'm usually falling asleep, but yeah, I don't know. Like I think I'm worried about the in between time. What they're going to do with that, what they're not going to do with that, to show how they've changed, how they grew up, and how they did their amnesia stuff and slowly come back. I hope they don't overdo it, but I hope we get the vibe for, okay, that's who this character is now, and that's why either they're reluctant to go or why they are having trouble with things at that time period. So just the big setup for the next movie. I hope they do it justice, because those the phone calls chapter, it's a tone setter. I think that you get to learn these characters really, really well. Mm-hmm. And now we're going backwards, right? Because that's chapter 3 in the book, where we don't really know those characters. Hardly, we don't at all. We know Bill slightly, but we haven't met them. But now we've spent a whole movie with these characters, and now are being reintroduced as adults. So I hope it just is congruous with itself, but also makes sense for the overall themes of the story.
Fair.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested to look at this as a chronological story as opposed to a flashback upon flashback. So I love the idea of splitting it that way. It's really interesting to me. So I'm very excited about seeing it that way. One thing I'm nervous about is that, like, the miniseries, I felt like the kid actors were much, much stronger collectively than the adult actors. Mm-hmm. And so I'm nervous because I felt like the kid actors in this version were also very, very strong. I'm really hoping the adult actors, who are good actors, I mean, like, I know the names of many of them, and that they have, good credentials, but I just hope it doesn't come off as cheesy soap opera-y like the adults did in the miniseries, even though the kids didn't feel like that in the
It's going to come down to the directing and the writing on that, I think.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So awesome. All right. All right, so make sure you follow us on social media at Floats Down Here. You can send us a digital balloon at floatsdownhere@gmail.com. You can look us up and all of our shows at thepodcastthat.com. Make sure you subscribe and rate us on iTunes.
This show and all of the shows at thepodcastthat.com are produced with the love and support of our wonderful Imaginary Legion patrons. Not a patron yet? Find out more about our reward tiers at patreon.com/stayimaginary.
So join us on our next episode where we're covering It Chapter 2. You'll float too.
Stay imaginary.
Thanks.